One day, my dad came into my room and I was ruminating over which friend I'm going to cut out of my life. And he sat down and he said, because he knew the language that I spoke, and he said, Jen, your friends are like clothes in your closet. You need the traditional ones, the ones that are going to last a decade, maybe a little bit longer. You put them on, you can wear them for business. They're a little classic and timeless. You're going to need your trendy clothes that are going to come and they're going to go. You're going to need clothes that make you feel a little sexy when you go out and you
Wow.
start
Yep.
dating, and you're
Yep.
going to need, and he went through this whole genre. And then, honey, you're going to have that favorite sweatshirt. And that's the piece that you're never going to let go of, but you need them all to make
Love
up your
this.
wardrobe.
Welcome to today's episode of The Power of Reinvention. Here we talk with my guests about the dreams, the visions, and the passions that individuals have every day and dare to explore them. Whether it's business or personal, you're entitled to live the life that you want, and no matter what the circumstances, you have the power to create success, fulfill your dreams, and live with passion. That's what I'm talking about. So dare greatly and happy reinventing, folks. Let's do this.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Power of Reinvention. I hope everybody has been having an amazing beginning of your fall season. We've skipped a few weeks due to all the madness and wonderful craziness in work and business and life, but we are back, and I am absolutely delighted to have my guest, Jen Principe, here today with me. Hi, Jen. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, honored to be a part of this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, it is exciting. You and I had such a beautiful conversation a couple of weeks ago, and our dear friend Jody connected us, and I can understand why she wanted us to speak. And
Thank
then
you.
to be
Yeah.
able to take this conversation to the airwaves and be able to share a little bit about you and all of your magic and the work that you are doing with my audience is a pleasure and an honor. So thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. It's my pleasure.
I'm going to share a little bit about your background just for context for those that are hearing or meeting you for the first time. Jen is a stylist, author, speaker, and founder dedicated to transforming lives from the outside in. And after 14 years as a sought-after celebrity wardrobe stylist, Jen followed a deeper calling to blend fashion with faith and healing. She authored an amazing book called A Common Thread, which I'm just digging into now, actually the audio version, so yay. A
Oh, good.
spiritually rooted memoir that explores clothing as a conduit for transformation and self-discovery. She's also founded The Phoenix Effect, a nonprofit that empowers individuals facing life-debilitating illnesses through styling makeovers and photography experiences. Featured on KTLA, BBC, and Inside Edition, Jen continues to inspire audiences through the message of purpose, resilience, and inner beauty. And that is just what an amazing way to take the gifts you were given, the skills, the knowledge, the expertise, and really channel it into something extraordinary that is helping other people. Kudos to you, Jen. This is really
Thank you.
very exciting. And I really would love to dig into all of this. I'd love to start with sort of an origin story question. Sort of who was little Jen and what inspired you to do the work you're doing? And did you have any ideas, a
No.
young girl, or growing up, that this, in fact, would be your calling? And just give us a little bit of your backstory. Who was 5-year-old Jen?
Broken. I came from a very unique upbringing, a traumatic and chaotic environment. I never in a million years thought that I would have this career, this purpose. I was led here one thread at a time. That's why I named my book A Common Thread.
Love that.
But as a child, I had a fundamental belief that I was born broken and not good enough. And one of the things that I did when I was younger is I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who was very religious. And one of the things that she did was she spent a majority of her time being of service. So on Sundays after the Sabbath, we would go to the Jewish Federation gift store, and she would work the register, and I would head straight towards the back, and I would rummage through the clothes, and I would play dress up. And if you've ever seen a child engage in role play, what they're doing is they're ascribing meaning to the articles of clothing that they're wearing. We do this all the time. That's why we call it the power suit, or when you're wearing something that you just feel really good and you show up energetically different. Well,
Yeah.
as a child, when they're doing role play, what they're doing subconsciously is actually it's actually proven psychologically. It's called enclothed cognition. And that's the systemic influence that clothes have on the wearer's psychological process, meaning what we wear can transform how we feel, how we behave, and how we perform tasks. So my early interest, my fascination with clothing was really the beginning of a calling. I just didn't know it then. And then as I got older, I remembered that it was called Garanimals back then, but I color
Oh,
coded my
yes.
brother's hangers, and I would watch movies and just fixate on the wardrobe, losing sight of the entire plot of the movie because I was just so fixated.
I
And
love
then as
that.
I got even older, I just knew that I had a gift. I understood colors and energy behind them. I understood body types. And what I didn't understand was how to listen to that internal voice inside of me until I really slowed down. And so later on, I was sort of led. I've had 30 jobs, Kathy, 30. 30, which is no wonder
Okay.
why I became self-employed. Talk about reinventing yourself over and over and over
Please do
again.
tell. So yeah, I've got so many threads literally to pull on right
Yes.
here in everything you've just said, and I don't want to stop the momentum in what you're sharing. But those 30 jobs and those kind of moments where you pivoted, you reinvented, was there always that constant of your passion and interest
The
in the
in
styling?
in a way that I truly believe that our gifts and our talents are whispers of our calling. But it's hard sometimes when you're not listening. So I've
There
always
you
had a
go.
love affair with clothing. I just never had the self-esteem, the courage to kind of step into that until I was literally led there. And then once I was led there, my career took off, but it took me a long time to get there because our calling isn't linear. It's not a straight line. It's layered, it's evolving, it's evergreen, it's filled with pain and joy and chaos and clarity. And we really need to slow down sometimes to recognize where we're being led and how to get there. And so those 30 jobs, little by little, gave me a little bit of self-confidence to maybe step into the next thing. But I truly believe that my calling isn't to be a stylist. That was the door that opened. But really the calling was to give back the gift. And one of the things that my grandmother used to say to me when we were donating our time, and thank God for her because she gave me the the knowledge to know that the way out of self is into service. And she used to say, Jen, you are blessed to be a blessing. She used to say that to me all the time. You're blessed to be a blessing. So, which leads me into my nonprofit. Um, and that came about 4 years after I was styling. I had a successful career. I felt like I was in my zone. I was reinventing myself as a stylist. And I was on a run one day, and my kids were getting older. And I have two boys. I have three sons. I have a lot of nephews. Um, a male dominant environment. My mother left when I was 6 months old. She left our family. And the replacement that I had for a mother was very abusive and alcoholic. And she suffered from a lot of pain, and she was bipolar. And so I grew up in a really chaotic home. But I was always told that the girls stay close to their mothers, and then the boys kind of leave. They get married and they leave. So I was in a pity party, and I was on a run, which is where I get channeled mostly when I'm out in nature, in the universe.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about my boys going off to college and how I was going to be alone. And I started getting into this pity party. And all of a sudden, I just had this thought of stop. Just stop, give your gift away. You're blessed to be a blessing. So I sat down on the side of the road, and I remembered this girl that was at Children's Hospital, and a friend of mine was a singer, and she would go sing to her on the weekends. So I thought, I know what clothing can do for the everyday person, whether I'm working with a celebrity or I'm working with a stay-at-home mom. There's always this incredible shift in self-confidence,
Yeah.
self-assurance, transformation. And I thought, wow, if this is working for my clients, imagine what this would do for somebody who is really suffering from a life-debilitating disease or trauma. And I talk about this a lot when I do my public speaking about the 3 things that you need to follow when you're getting what I called a divine download or a soul spark. And so I called her from the side of the road and I said, hey, it's Jen. And I said, I have a question for you. How well do you know this family? And she said, well, I don't know them well, but they're a lovely family. Why? And I told her, I said, I have this idea. I just want to be of service. I want to give this gift away and no strings attached. But what if I just do like a tea party for her? Or I do, some sort of a day of respite just for her to enjoy and not be poked and prodded. And then I'll make her a coffee table book of all these
Right.
photos for her parents to keep. And she said, let me give you his number. So I called the dad on the side of the road, still on the run. That was like a 3-hour run. And I
Wow.
called him and I said, hi, this is Jen. I didn't say my last name. And I kind of started rambling and he stopped me and he said, wait, is this Jen Principe? And I said, yeah. And he said, Jen, this is Jeff, which is my son Jeremy's first baseball coach.
Oh, no.
So
How?
I knew
Right.
right then and there. And that was
Yeah.
my first Phoenix. And that was called, that organization. I hadn't really founded the nonprofit at that point, but it was called Pretty in Pink. And then I transformed it to the Phoenix Effect, which I can talk about, but I feel like I'm talking. And I
I
see
know
you wanting
this
to
is
ask
this is no,
questions.
I have many questions, but your story is so beautiful and that yeah, I will never stop you from talking because what you've just shared so far and the fact that these are the moments, right, that become so clear to you. One of the things you said earlier in my book, which is called Reinvent Your Life, What Are You Waiting For? This came out ironically and not intentionally at the very beginning of the pandemic. My pub date was March 7th, 2020, which we all know was a week before everybody was sent home and, told to stay at home and sit in their homes and not go anywhere. And the fortuitous thing in all of that, being a marketer and doing what I do and having the amazing team that I have, we pivoted from me going on a national book tour and having all these launch events within 24 hours. I had to rescind invitations and say, no, we're going to be doing this virtually. What I was doing was inviting to do exactly what I say in the book, which is sit back, pause, listen to yourself. And as you noted just a moment ago, when we're ready to hear something, or we make the space and the time to hear something in ourselves, to hear our inner voice, to recognize the things that are shifting in us, that is where the magic happens. That is where the opportunity comes up. And those are the moments we have to create if they're not naturally being created for us. And COVID, ironically, was a silver lining for me in the publishing of a book where I literally was inviting everybody to this moment in their lives to consider what is working in all parts of their lives, right? Business, personal relationships, spiritual, faith, hobbies, all of the things. We're very complex individuals. And if we just stop long enough to listen and it's what I call that gnawing voice in the back of your head that you keep, ignoring, you keep pushing things under the
Mm,
rug, you keep going, yeah,
mhm.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
But these are the moments that we have to start to open up and listen to a little bit more. So I love that you touched on that because it feels like you heard it, but you're empowering other people to hear it, to see it, to be open to it. And it's critical because that is the beginning of the rest of our lives. These are the beginning touchstones for reinvention. And reinventions come in all shapes and sizes. They could be 5-minute reinventions, they could be 20-year reinvention journeys. And I feel like, our connecting and having this conversation is truly an extraordinary way to help people find that superpower in
Huh.
themselves. And I would love you to share more about the Phoenix effect. And you
Absolutely.
mentioned
Yeah.
the three things to follow that are sort of what you share
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, yeah,
Well,
if you
first
don't.
of all, I completely agree with you about slowing down because when we slow down, we're able to not only recognize what I like to call the God shots or the soul sparks, that intuitive knowing, that deep intuition, that creative urge. Um, we're able to kind of recognize those and know that that's our internal GPS map. That's our, which I like to call my GPS, my guider of purpose and spirit. Some people call it God. I happen to, but some people don't believe in God. But I use the acronym guider of God is a guider of direction. It's your guider of
Yeah,
direction.
I
So
love
it's really
that.
your internal road map. And so when I do my public speaking, I talk a little bit about how do you tune in to that internal roadmap? And I think that there's three things we need to do. First is, well, here's the thing. It's very similar to our GPS map in our car, right? Our global positioning system. It knows exactly where we are on Earth at all times and can get us from point A to point B the most efficient way possible. That is a miracle. Think about that. On
Yeah,
Earth, point A
yeah,
to point B. Now,
yeah.
that sounds a lot like my GOD, my guider of direction. So the only difference really is that when we get into our car, we can program where we're going. But in life, we don't really know the final destination. So we have to tune into the language. If I get into my car and I tune into French or Italian, I love having an Italian man speak to me. but
I have
but
an
I'm not
Australian voice speaking to me, which is
even
my,
better, even better.
yeah,
But I'm going to get lost because I don't understand the language. So for me, that language happened to be something that some people might consider materialistic, clothing, wardrobe, fashion. But there's always deeper meaning to our everyday conduits to everyday relationships. So the language for me was clothing. And so the first step is to recognize the language. And then the second step is to have faith. So in other words, if I'm in my car and I program GPS and it tells me to get off at Balboa, but in my mind I'm thinking that's not right, and I decide to get off at Haskell, I'm going to get detoured, lost. I mean, it doesn't mean that if I don't listen to my GPS map, I'm still going to hit roadblocks, U-turns, detours, flat tires. That's all part of the journey and it's
exactly.
important. But we have to have some faith that we're being led. And then the last, and I think the most important thing is we need to execute. That's, I think, the most important thing. So we get these intuitive hits, these knowings, this deep intuition, this creative urge, and you can't sit on it. You got to move forward. You just have to put one step in front of the other. And what happens is when you do, and I believe when you do, when you're in service and you're using your gift to be of service, you're just flowing downstream. It's like divine synchronicity. It's like things just flow. You don't have to fight the current. Doors just open because when you're in your calling and purpose, you're really being of service of the gifts I believe that you've been given. And that gift for me just happened to be clothing, which is a very powerful tool.
It
It's
is.
a
I mean,
very
I
powerful
remember, look,
tool.
I was 24 years old when I started my company. Okay. So it's been a very long time. Don't do the math, but it's been a long time. And when I was 24, the most important thing I could do every day was suit up and show up. And that
Absolutely.
literally meant to me a blazer. And in my case, it's not for everybody, but heels and being put together and looking like I was a professional and I meant business and I was there to do the job. And that was the energy that I projected. It was the energy that was projected back to me. And it made me feel like I was going to change the energy of where I was early in the morning to where I was when I went out into the world. It also meant I was projecting that to my staff, therefore
Yes.
enabling them to
Yes.
actually realize the way they needed to show up. So we were all there to do a job. We were all there, and sure, you can have casual Fridays and all of that good stuff. But it was so important to me as a young person to recognize the importance of showing up that way. It's not something we see as much nowadays. And, we're living in a bit of a different world than we were when I started out. But I do think the importance of that is not lost. And I love that you recognize the energy and the importance of how we connect, how clothes make us feel. And, whether it's color, whether it's style, whether it's comfort, all of these things really impact the way
Correct.
we show up and feel every day.
Correct. Correct.
And for
Yes.
me, all these many, many years of doing what I've been doing, there's never been anything more important. There's nothing I love to hear more than, wow, you're overdressed or you're dressed really nicely. I'm like, thank you. The effort went into that. It's not by chance. It's who I am. But I gave it thought because it matters and I want to show up that way. And I love that
I
this is
agree. I
something that you're
agree.
helping people
Mhm.
understand the value of, whatever
Yes,
that is.
yes, yes, and I love that you use the word energy because that's exactly what it is. It's energy, and when we show up feeling better about ourselves or a specific color that just elevates our mood, we're the covers of our own book in a way,
Yeah.
right? And when you're out and you're wanting to socialize and you're wanting to market for connection, not market to get something, but for connection. You want to show up in a way that that people are attracted to because whether it's a brooch or a family heirloom, that's something that sparks up a conversation, or it's just a
Right.
color that makes you feel good. My dad, I talk about this a little bit in my book as well, because my book is a combination of faith, fashion, and personal transformation. But I talk about in the very beginning of my book, as a teenager, I really struggled. I was in deep depression and I had a very difficult time with relationships and I was codependent. And I just didn't understand women bonding because I didn't have that. I had
Right.
a lot of abuse. So I didn't understand that.
Right.
And one day my dad came into my room and I was ruminating over which friend I'm going to cut out of my life. That was a theme. I would just cut them out. And he sat down and he said, because he knew the language that I spoke, and he said, Jen, your friends are like clothes in your closet. You need the traditional ones, the ones that are going to last a decade, maybe a little bit longer. You put them on, you can wear them for business. They're a little classic and timeless. You're going to need your trendy clothes that are going to come and they're going to go. You're going to need clothes that make you feel a little sexy when you go out and you
Wow.
start
Yep.
dating. And
Yep.
and he went through this whole genre. And then he said, and then honey, you're going to have that favorite sweatshirt. You might have one or two that brings you comfort every time you wear it. And that's the piece that you're never going to let go of. But you need them all to make up your
Yes.
wardrobe.
I
And it
love
was like
this.
such a profound analogy
Wow,
at such a young
Dad.
age that
Right.
I hung on to that for years. And I actually opened in my audio, ding, 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 cheers. Here's to my friends in my closet. And I've been doing that for years.
Incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. I love that. And you talk about your dad. My dad taught me how to knit. So
Oh,
I love
that's
the
a
role that, these men in our lives, and I would say not the men of today, but the men of yesteryear, given what ages our dads may be, that, they had some kind of influence in things in our lives that, were really special for us. And, I think that's super cool.
That's really sweet
Um,
that he taught you that.
yeah. I mean, my sisters and I come from a family of girls. And, I think we all still marvel over that those were, one of the things that he taught us, which is cute
That's
because
so
my mom was,
sweet.
my mom was sort of the Martha Stewart of the family, with the everything from the, plastic flowers and making our bedspreads and sewing and creating a lot of our clothes for the three of us. I mean, she was extraordinary. We say that she was like the original Martha Stewart because of
I
all
love
that she
that.
did.
It's interesting too how clothes, how sometimes you'll see something and you go, "Oh my God, that reminds me so much of Tracy. That's so Tracy," how we can
Uh-huh.
sort of take on this identity of what we gravitate towards. In fact,
Right.
when my father passed away, I was 21 when he passed away. So I was very young, and yes, and it's never an easy time to lose a parent. But one of the things that I did for my family, and I've done this for my clients as well, is my dad used to wear this favorite sweatshirt around the house. This blue, called Easy sweatshirt, and I took the sweatshirt and I made pillows for each of my brothers out of the fabric, out of the sweatshirt, and I use mine as a push pin for my business today. So, when I pull it out, I think,
The
I
moment.
found my calling. I found
I
it,
love that.
So
That's beautiful. Good
yeah.
for you. So, I've got a quick question for you about what do you do for yourself? You talked about being in nature, stepping away. Life is chaotic and crazy and busy, and you are pouring so much of yourself into other people and helping them have their sort of superpowers, their success, find their calling. What do you do for you to recharge, to reset? What are those things? And have you had moments where you've really sat down and sort of maybe you're on that run and you sit down on a rock and go, okay, I really need to just stop the world and rethink where I'm at, what I need to do? What is that reinvention aha moment that you're searching for or at least being open to? So let's talk a bit about those moments. I think people are often challenged with trying to find or course correct at times and would love to hear kind of like what is your journey with that?
Agree, agree. I do spend a lot of time in nature. I do a lot of walking, in addition to working out, but my working out is it doesn't I don't get channeled in that way. But when I'm out in nature, I really feel connected to the earth. I feel connected to spirit. I feel connected to the people. And I get recharged when I'm with my family, when I'm with my husband. I love to take baths. But mostly it's when I'm out in nature. And, I believe that we reinvent ourselves constantly throughout our lives. It's actually why I named my Phoenix effect the Phoenix effect. For those listening and don't know the story of the Phoenix is a legendary mythical bird that is beautiful. It's vibrant and it's strong and it's majestic. And as it ages, it loses its brilliance, it loses its strength, and it builds a nest of frankincense and it decides to surrender itself to the fire. And we expect that bird to perish in the process, but it doesn't. It comes out and rises a new, stronger bird. And so, I believe we're all part of that process. Many times, every time we reinvent ourselves, whether it's divorce, leaving a toxic friendship, whether it's changing a career, losing a family member, losing a friend. There's so many times we're reinventing. I'm reinventing myself right now because I just resigned a 14-year lucrative career and I'm stepping in and holding space to public speak and to promote my book, which is really scary.
So
But
let's talk about that for a moment, Jen. That fear, right? That you
yeah,
say it's scary and people are listening to you going, wow, she's got it together. She's confident. She knows what she's doing. But that fear, that quote unquote, which is something I hate to bring up, but everybody references the imposter syndrome, which I think is absurd because if you can't imagine being something and stepping into it and putting on those rose colored glasses and becoming that, you will not become that. So
correct.
I don't believe that imposter syndrome is something anybody should apply to themselves, but rather the opportunity to create, evolve, reinvent, and envision where you want to be and become that. But it's real. It's real for a lot of people and
Oh,
that fear.
absolutely.
So as you're stepping into this incredible space, doing what you're doing and leaving behind some of the things that you were doing, how do you overcome those moments of fear, self-doubt, the risk that may come with putting yourself out there?
Yes, fear. We all have fear. I mean, it's especially public speaking. That's like I think the top five fears that everyone has. So there's an acronym, and I'm sure you've heard it: false evidence appearing real, for fear. I love acronyms. I have them all over
Right.
my house.
Right.
But fear isn't. Courage isn't the absence of fear. But I personally. My fear is not meeting my maximum potential and not figuring out what my calling is. I'm more fearful of that than I am making mistakes. And when I get into fear, I really try to imagine that I'm not doing what I'm doing for me. I'm doing what I'm doing to pave the way for others because my story is the story that so many people live but don't have the courage or the voice or the language to share. So my story is meant to be told. I look at my past, and though difficult and crazy, I was given that story for a reason. Our creation is an invitation to contribute what is uniquely ours. My story is so unique that I have to share it.
Yeah.
I have to give permission for other people to know that they're not alone and that they have a voice. So when I get into fear, I really try to breathe it, and know that I am here to be of service. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to forget what I'm going to say on stage. I'm going to get the jitters. My voice is going to crackle. All of that is going to happen. But I would rather show up and share my story and inspire somebody than to not step into my full authentic self. I have
Which is
something to
incredible.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
have
you
something
do,
to
and I think the
say.
power of those words in your message is so much bigger than is her voice crackling to, "Wow, she looks nervous." And to be able to
Right.
humanize it, I've been
That's
through
right.
enough situations on stages and keynotes and what have you, where you recognize that that's going to happen, but if you can get comfortable with the fact that what you're sharing is so much bigger than that and authentically show up as a human being, everybody can relate to that. And, like what you just said in my book, I interviewed hundreds of people, 30 of them are featured in here. I wanted people to hear other people's stories so that they could say, well, gee, that's just like me. I am the curator of other people's reinvention stories. It's why I do this podcast. It's for others to recognize that there is a little of them in somebody else that they can say, wow, if they could do it, I could do it too.
Absolutely.
And that is a
Absolutely.
very wonderful gift to give to people, that permission. I talk about the word entitled, and I'm all about people understanding that they are entitled to have the life that they want. And the moment you know you're entitled, you can then set on your journey to go create it. You talk about the GPS system. I talk about the reinvention roadmap, which is exactly that. It's like, set that destination. It may take you a very circuitous way to get there. Ultimately, there'll be detours and bumps in the roads and all those things.
Right.
But if you have an idea where you're trying to go, whether it's 5 minutes or 20 years from now, you will stay the course in the little things you do, the people you attract in your life, the mentors that you will bring into the world, the conversations that you have, all of those little things, breadcrumb by breadcrumb, will get you there if you
I think so
have your eye
too.
on the prize.
That's
And
right.
you can reset what you want
Mhm.
your destination to be because things come up in your life that make you rethink it. And that's okay too.
Mhm.
Give yourself permission, right? To be flexible, to create the life that you want and, bring those with you that you want to bring in your life. And I
I
think
agree.
that's good.
Visualization is also a big component of where I'm headed. I visualize me standing on stage, me delivering and being channeled the right thing at the right time. And timing is also really important. In my book, I talk a lot about the what ifs because sometimes I was expecting something to happen, a big, opportunity, and it didn't happen at the time. But in retrospect, you look back and you think, I was not ready. I was
Right.
just not ready. I needed
Right.
more lessons in my life.
I
It is
love
a
that.
journey, right?
Yeah.
And
No,
that has
it's a
happened
really
so many
important thing.
times.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So it took me a long time. I didn't start out to be a stylist. I was led here, and then I started my nonprofit, and then my book got channeled to me. So I didn't have the full vision. And of course, I'm impatient and I want things to happen very quickly, but
Right.
it's all in sort of divine timing. I wasn't ready. Today, I feel more authentically ready to step into that role, which is why I let my career go, which was very scary
So
and
what do you
exciting.
see for yourself in the next 5 years? What is it that you want to create? Where do you see yourself?
I want to create connection. I want to create an opportunity for people to know not only my story, but so that they can resonate and stop hiding behind their story, so that they can feel inspired to move forward. I want to meet people and inspire them and see their journey and their lives open up as well. I want to, through my book, you're going to learn a lot about fashion, which is super fun because I believe that there's a balance between purpose and our journeys, and also not letting go of that child inside and that fun, playful side. So I want to bring joy into people's lives. I want to get on stage and tell people my story so that they know that they can come out more whole and not less, and that we can overcome hard things. We are not defined by our past. And let me tell you, when you read my book, you know, tackled to the ground by cops and handcuffed, kicked out of school 4 times. I mean, abuse and like trauma. You would look at me and you would never know. And that's the
Right.
point. And the biggest thing I want people to know is while it's important to dress the cover of your book, we have no idea what goes on behind closed doors and the stories that people have had to live through. And if we can just take the time to be open and to meet people where they're at and listen to their
Yeah.
stories,
Yeah.
we could miss a bestseller because we're judging way too quickly.
Right.
So that's where I
Love
see
that.
myself, is just,
That's
stepping into that and sharing my book and the concepts in my book, growing my nonprofit. That's a huge
right.
part of what I want to do, because that is where I think my soul feels most aligned. And, when it comes to finding your purpose, I think that it's not a straight line. I said that before. It's not a straight line. It's going to take detours and roadblocks, but your interests are part of your purpose. Maybe you're an incredible listener, or maybe you are extremely creative and your art can inspire somebody to step back into their creativity, or
Yeah.
maybe you're deeply organized and your structure can bring um, calmness to somebody's chaos. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't need the highest achievement, loudest of titles. You just need to go where your soul feels most aligned.
That's such an incredible statement. I sort of a drop mic moment, and frankly, we're at time. So I think this
Okay.
is where we drop the mic on that incredibly profound statement. And I love
Thank
your
you.
perspective and what you're sharing on that, Jen.
Thank you.
Tell us where we can find common threads. How do we find you? How do we reach and understand and know more about Phoenix? And just, I want people to be able to have access to all that you're
Yes.
sharing, please.
Yes, thank you. So this is my book, and it's called A Common Thread, and it can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I did an audio. It is my voice. Some people say they
Yes, it
like the audio
is. It's
better because you
gorgeous. Now, a
can
lot of
you can
people are
hear
like,
me.
I'd like to go to sleep listening to you because you have a beautiful
Uh,
voice.
I had no idea, but I have to say, doing the audio breathed life into the story. So it was one of my
Yeah.
favorite parts. But I'm also on Instagram, Jen Principe Styles, and my book has a unique feature. It's got a QR code. You can scan it and it'll take you to tutorials on how to build your wardrobe from the ground up, because a lot of people can't afford the luxury of a personal stylist. And then my website is jpstyles.com. You can go there if you have a Phoenix that you want to nominate. I'm looking for my next Phoenix. And you can see the Phoenix Effect transformations right there on the Giving Back tab.
Amazing. And we're going to include all of that information. If you're driving, walking, don't have a pen handy, it's all going to be in the show notes. So don't worry. You can just look down at the show notes, and everything that Jen just shared there will be in there. Jen, I adore you. I love
I
what
adore
you're
you
doing.
too.
I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
to share you with this amazing audience.
Thank
And
you.
I look forward to so many more conversations between you and I that will not be recorded, only because we'll have time together and spend time
Me too.
together.
Me too. I would love
And
that.
I really appreciate all that you're doing, and good luck on this
Thank you.
journey. I'm
Thank
excited to
you.
continue
Yes,
watching
God
as your
bless.
friend.
Thank you.
And for those listening, please feel free to check the show notes so you can follow and pick up a copy of Jen's book, Common Thread, and all the information, all the fun stories, interviews, content at the Reinvention Exchange, more podcasts, blogs, anecdotes, inspiring links to other people's websites that will help you get to where it is that you want to go on your reinvention journey. Of course, you're welcome to pick up a copy of my book if you don't already have one. Reinvent Your Life. What are you waiting for? And I thank you all for joining us and look forward to joining you on the next episode of The Power of Reinvention. So happy reinventing, everybody. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for listening to The Power of Reinvention. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Wouldn't mind a 5-star review. It would be greatly appreciated. Also, be sure to visit thereinventionexchange.com to share your reinvention stories, suggest a guest, join the newsletter mailing list, get access to my book, which is called Reinvent Your Life, What Are You Waiting For?, and discover fantastic bonus content with my blogs, and listen in to the Reinvention virtual chat series. Don't forget to join me next week for another episode. Please share with a friend, and thank you for listening. Happy reinventing.